we're live.
Good morning. Oh my God, we figured it out.
What
I
worked?
will become a technology maven by the by the time that we are complete with our project, which may be never. So, anyway, welcome everybody to the launch of our new series, my collaboration with Dr. Andrea Sleminski, PhD. We are debuting this new YouTube series on my channel, and it's called Goddess Matters, relating timeless themes to
We're live.
contemporary topics
Oh
and
my
women's
God.
lived experiences. Hey, hey. So here we are. Welcome. There's going to be lots of laughter, especially today, because I have no idea what's going on with the tech. So,
Oh,
anyway,
could it get any more complicated, right? Oh my
yeah.
goodness.
So
I shouldn't say that because then they'll change everything next week. So,
Exactly, exactly. I had like my Zoom just kicked in, so like the new kind of cinematic feature, so it keeps going in and out, and I'm like, wow, I'm like on a ship. I feel seasick. What's happening?
She has a camera person. Yeah.
I wish. I hair and makeup too. Does anybody want to be my hair and makeup person? Okay, that like seriously, when I was doing TV film stuff, which wasn't that often, that was my favorite part of the job was getting my hair and makeup done every day.
Sit in the chair and let somebody else worry about how you look. Isn't that nice, right?
Exactly. Okay, Dr. would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, sure. Good morning. I'm so happy to be here with you, Annalisa. Thanks so much for asking me to co-host this new endeavor with you. I'm really looking forward to it. My name is Andrea Modisette Slominski, which nobody can confidently pronounce them when they see them in print. No one can remember how to spell them. So I just go by Dr. A because Modisette Slominski as a hyphenated name is a little bit of a nightmare. Trying to remember how to spell it to put it into a Google search bar is even worse. So you call me Andrea, Dr. A, I don't care. Basically, I am a woman's midlife therapeutic coach. And of course, someone's calling me. There we go. We'll hang up on them. I'm a woman's midlife therapeutic coach. I have an MA and PhD in mythological studies with an emphasis in depth psychology from Pacifica Graduate Institute. Both Annalisa and I went to the same grad school. That's where we met. And I've had a private practice helping women go through the triple transformation of midlife in the ages of about 45 to 70, covering the perimenopause to postmenopause, the psychological shift of midlife, and then the two of those combining to create the spiritual shift that women often experience during what I call regency, which is the spiritual shift of purpose, meaning, and belonging. So that's what I do in my work. I do one-to-one coaching. I do group coaching, I do workshops, I do retreats, I teach classes, I do all kinds of different things. And now I'm a YouTube co-host. So
I know. Welcome. Thank you. I'm so excited to have you here to bring like a new and fresh dynamic perspective to these conversations I've already started to have, and you have them in your own way with your clients and through your own work. Someone said hi to us in the chat. Just wanted to let you know, Dr. A. Um, so I'm also going to give a little introduction to myself for those of you who don't know me or who have been following me for a little bit and still don't really know me. So my name is Dr. ANNALISA'S. I have a background as an actress, but now I consider myself a goddess scholar, an embodiment facilitator, a pilgrimage leader. Come with me to France in May 2026 to visit Mary Magdalene's sacred sites, which, by the way, you'll see this about me. I was telling Dr. Andrea I have the Gemini disease where I can't stop talking once I start. But there's also this thing where we like interrupt ourselves. Pim, one of our colleagues calls it the Melville. No, who's the guy that wrote Moby Dick?
um oh geez. Okay. Herman Melville, yeah.
Yeah, so Melvillian rant where you tell like stories within stories within stories.
Right.
Okay, anyway, so the point is I pulled the Mary Magdalene card for us today in this oracle deck, so which felt very, very supportive and on purpose for me and Dr. A,
Yes,
since that's
absolutely.
one of the we'll say archetypes that I work with. So yeah, so pilgrimage leader and also I create a lot of ritual theater as well. And soon to be author. I have a book on its way out in the fall about the Sumerian goddess Inanna and re-sacralizing the menstrual cycle and how I use her myth as a sacred blueprint to do that. Okay, so that's moi. That's a little bit about me. And next week we'll be getting a lot. We'll do more of a deep dive into my work and your work, especially your work, I think, to get people really acquainted with what you do here on my channel. So, okay, so enough about us. So, Dr. A, why are we here?
Well, Dr. A, yeah. I was like, when I was like, oh, it's Dr. A and Dr. A, we're going to be A squared. All right, that's cool. Why are we here? Well, Goddess Matters, right, is what we decided to, after kicking around names, is to talk about why does the goddess matter? What is all the hullabaloo around the goddess? What are we talking about in terms of how the ancient goddess archetypes, energy fields, forms, metaphors, mythologems, right? Myth models, how they relate to women's lives now, how we can use those the tales, the myths, the metaphors, the myth models to live our most authentic and fulfilled lives, right?
Yeah, exactly. And also, it was really important for me to share with people what the title actually means,
Yep.
because it's definitely a play on meanings, right? So goddess matters, like the matters of the goddess, like these are the happenings, or these are the related topics to goddess herself or goddess consciousness, archetypes, etc. But also like hashtag the goddess matters, she matters to our everyday lives. And then there's like the deeper complex meanings of the word matter, which is in its root meaning, it's related to the concept of mater, which is mother. The root, mater is mother. It's related to the root word, obviously, for mother then, and material matter is like a material, and also Mother Earth in that way. And this idea of that root word meaning like source to origin. So this is really like the deeper meaning is like the goddess matters because she tells us something about our origin, about why we're here, So there's that deeper philosophical meaning too. So as we kind of weave together all these themes through our shows, you can see the way that she spirals around all of those different meanings of why she matters.
Yeah, for sure. It's and in a time when it's so interesting. Patriarchy is such a big theme now, right? In social media and in conversations that are happening across social media and in different fields of psychology and mythology and the favorite phrase now of smash the patriarchy, right? So when we're thinking about patriarchy, we have to think about what it is, when it started, when it became the dominant cultural form on the planet, and if it became the cultural dominant form, what did it come from? What was before, right? And what was before was a lot of matrilineal and matrifocal and matriarchal cultures that we can tell from archaeology, from archaeomythology, from anthropology, social studies, history, right? The early human cultures and the relationship to the idea of a female godhead or a female form of divinity from which all life was born or was created. So yeah, I think it's really important because we're at a time when we're kind of at a breaking point. We're looking at the rise of authoritarianism, we're looking at the rise of misogyny, sexism, racism, all of the isms, right? And trying to come back to some sort of sustainability, some sort of hopeful positive, what we'd call, I guess, in alchemy, the hieros gamos, right? The coming together of those two dual energies called the masculine and the feminine, right? If we want to look at them beyond gender in that sense, because in the human psyche, right, they exist in both men and women, those energy fields. So Yeah, it's very, very prescient, very now, very important, and at a time when women are really feeling the rise of misogyny, the attempt at the erasure of some of our rights, right? As women here, let's just talk about the US, right? Um, yeah, looking at at what it means to be a woman in this culture and where we find the images of sacredness or female divinity are really important, I think.
Right. So many great points I want to respond to. So I think I do, I know, I'm like, oh, holding them all here and listening. That's a skill. Um, I do want to speak to the rise of the feminine. That's a big theme we want to talk about today. And before I do that, I want to make a point because you brought up matriarchy, like pre-patriarchal, matriarchal societies, and those of us who read about it, who are in the world of goddess studies, matriarchal studies, are aware of that. But what I find interesting is when you try to share that with people, either A, they assume that a matriarchy is the opposite of patriarchy, where there's a top-down hierarchy of men over women, which is not the case at all. And I always go back to the work of Heidi Gotner Abendroth, who has like 40, 50, 60 years of work in this area running the matriarchal studies um, organization or institute. And we will get more deeply into this. I'm sure we'll touch on it a lot throughout our talks, but we will also invite people in who are experts in that world. But also, it's not even just in matriarchal studies where we're challenging this idea that that patriarchy is normal and has always been that way and is human nature, which is not true. Um, but people will we're taught to believe that that's true because that's part of our education. But there's a great book. I'll have to link it in the text box because I'm forgetting what it's called right now. Oxford Press, and it's a collection of essays by people in primatology, archaeology, anthropology, and some other EGs,
Yeah.
the study of, who are like investigating this idea of war, for example. Is war common across cultures? Is it inevitable? Is it something common we see back to our, origins as humans? And most of the essayists in this book are men, okay? So it's not even like women on a quote unquote feminist cause. And I feel like I have to preface that because sometimes it feels like if you're a man, you're just taken more seriously. So
Mhm.
we can get into that, but another time. But the point is the people in this book, they basically come to the conclusions that war is not inevitable. There's no evidence for it beyond like 7,000, 6,000 BCE. So kind of in the earlier stages of the Neolithic area, when we start to see larger structures, defensive structures, or larger scale warfare, et cetera, et cetera. And there's a lot of different reasons for that. So yeah, there's no evidence for it, and they look at like different primates to compare to human beings because even those justifications for patriarchy and war are very limited and skewed.
Mhm.
Um, and also, they say that they think it's because of Western biases that we believe that patriarchy and war is inevitable part of human nature, even though they're like, obviously humans have the capacity for it, but it's not universal across cultures and across time.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to bring that in because I hope we get to talk about that more later too. Um, and then we titled this video "The Rise of the Feminine" because you and I are both very passionate about this
Mm.
topic, right? It's a theme it's something I address at the introduction of my upcoming book, and I use the Anana myth as a comparison um, to other myths. I'll just say what the idea is that we have these series of myths. Um, the Demeter Persephone myth. There's three different Hindu goddess myths that I know of. Sati, the original wife of Shiva, the god Shiva, Sati. There's also the Lakshmi myth. There's the Sita, Sita and Rama.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, Yep, there's the Lenape corn woman. There's the Oshun from the Aruba myth. There's the obviously the Inanna and Ishtar. I know I'm forgetting a few, but there's this premise that each of them holds that, the goddess, the sacred feminine principle, which is always in relationship to the sacred masculine principle, when she is disrespected and not honored for her role in creation, her equal role in creation or complementary role, she
Yeah.
will not hesitate to withdraw her life force energy from the cosmos, from this world. And we see the disastrous effects, famine, drought, the world, war,
Yeah.
the love, abundance, all of this stuff, desire, sexual desire, or not even just sexual desire, but desire, capital D, is just sucked from this world.
Yeah.
And so, what we see is that we are in this moment of her saying, like, if we can't honor and respect her, disaster will ensue, even more so than. But at the same time, we can see that there is this resurgence of her energy rising through women, rising through male allies, rising through, as I know you're going to speak to this in a moment because you spoke to it. I know you spoke about it in a recent workshop, the rising of the women's movement, the rising, the discovery, these like incredible discoveries, all within about 150 years of the rise of the modern feminist movement, like the
Mhm.
Gospel of Mary Magdalene, the discovery of Anana's text,
Mhm.
Çatalhöyük, as a maybe matriarchal goddess-centered society. These are all happening at the same time on purpose. I'm gonna hand it over to you because I know you have
Yeah.
you're like wanting to say
It's
something.
an amazing synchronicity, and it is something that I'm really passionate about. As I guess you could call it a theory, but when you look at all of the evidence, right, for what's been happening in the past 120 years, uh, I don't know what else you can call it other than the rise and return of, you could call it the sacred feminine, the archetypal feminine, you can call it the feminine principle, you could call it the Shakti principle, whatever it is that we want to call it in terms of that creative feminine energy that's so necessary in the balance of the masculine principle in the human psyche. So yeah, I mean, starting, let's see, we have starting at the end of the Romantic period, right? The rise of research into and thinking about early matriarchal cultures, right? We're looking at like the 1890s writings in philosophy and myth in the 1890s, and then coming forward into the 20th century, we have the rise of the women's rights movement, right? The suffrage movement, which was for women's rights and for the women's vote, right to vote, right? At the same time, we have the birth of what we'd call modern psychology, right? Which allows us to see and understand through the work of Jung and Freud and all those who came after them, the archetypal construct of the human psyche, the balance of what we would call the sacred masculine, the sacred feminine, or the archetypal dualities within the human psyche. We see that and the understanding of the collective unconscious, the personal unconscious, the ego, the psyche, all of this kind of understanding of humanity is coming now to the fore. Then as we go further into the 20th century, we have the rise of the second wave of feminism, right? We have the goddess movement. We have the feminist spirituality movement, which sometimes was goddess, and incorporated really, when we look at this expansion into what I guess we could put under the umbrella of feminist spirituality, which was in a sense the attempt of or the work of the women and the scholars and the women of the 1970s and 80s to reclaim those mythic images of the female as divine, right? From within a patriarchal system that was a monotheistic, male god, transcendent, you know, that that uh, the spiritual evolution of a person happened somewhere else, that it was not of this planet, that this is fallen, this whole system, we have to go beyond it, as opposed to early, more goddess-centered cultures and spiritual ideas that the that the sacred is immanent. It's in all things, right? It's in matter, it's in spirit, it's in people, it's in plants, it's in animals, it's in the world, right? As it was created. And so in the reclaiming through the 1960s, 70s, and 80s of women's rights, the feminist movement, looking to find images of the feminine mythic divine model, we get what I had already said of the goddess spirituality. We also get the growth of the Wiccan movement, and there are many different lineages, right, within that. And so there's this whole umbrella of new thinking that then, as we go forward, includes the New Age movement, includes all of these types of thinking that are outside of the patriarchal religious norm in terms of trying to reclaim what's going on. So we have all of that happening at the same time. Then simultaneously, we we are marching forward through the industrial capitalist imperialist, right, uh, processes of Western culture, of basically wholesale stripping the resources of the planet and the people, to the point where now we're coming towards the edge of climate change, climate disaster, right?
Yeah.
And when we look at the history of the earth, of Mother Earth, of nature as always being imaged in a sense as feminine, right? As part of that whole feminine lineage, we can see that the care for the planet, the coming forward, the women's rights movement, the women's spirituality movement, all of this, right, is
Yeah.
and psychology is all happening in the last 100 years. And then on top of that, the kicker for me, of course, which is what started my practice and my dissertation subject, is that in the past 100 years, women's lifespan has expanded. Well, men's too, but women's lifespan has expanded to the point that boomer women were the first generation of women in the history of humanity to live past menopause together as a cohort. It had never happened before. Individual old women had gone through menopause since the time of Plato, right? And everyone has that great auntie or the grandmother who lived to be 105 or 92 or whatever it was. But never before have entire generations of women lived past menopause. So our lifespan expanded, which created a whole new life stage for women, which incorporates the years from about 45 to 70, more or less, plus or minus on the top end. And that includes perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause, midlife, right? The whole midlife reassessment, and also the spiritual reassessment of who am I now? Who do I want to be? What do I want to do in the next 20 to 30 years? I mean, women in the year 1900, statistically, white women were, their lifespan was about 48.7, and the lifespan of women of color was around 33 to 35 years. So when you look at it that way, right, not all of these things are happening in this 100 years, right? And so now women have this extra 20 to 30 years to come out of the householder years where they're tending to their families, tending to their friends, tending to their careers, having partners, having children, whatever it is the women are doing in that time. And to say, oh, okay, now after pouring myself for the last 20 to 30 years into everyone else, now it's time for me to reclaim this time for myself. And so I think that all of these changes are the energetic eruptions, if you want to say, of the anima mundi to reclaim and reinstitute and reinvigorate the idea of the sacred feminine in culture. And so now women who, just even in the US, by 2030, there'll be over 87 million US women over 45.
You
Yep.
know, it didn't. Sorry, can
Yeah,
I
go ahead. Go
jump in
ahead.
for a
Yeah.
second? It's interesting as you were saying that I was just reflecting on my own generation. I straddle both the millennial and the Gen X, which is really interesting because I'm like, I don't really feel like I'm part of either wholly or totally. And mo I would say a large swath of my friends are unpartnered.
Hmm.
Maybe like, boyfriends, but no life partners.
Hmm.
A couple of them. Okay, it's not everybody. No children.
Yeah.
So I also, it's like so en masse, it's like my generation, I think I'd have to look at the statistic, has a larger amount of women who actually chose not to do the traditional mothering route or put it off until later. So it's not like at this point, it's like, okay, I've invested so much in me, in my wellness, in developing who I am as a person, personal development. And now I'm ready for the next thing at 42 for like, a family, a partner, whatever. So it's a little bit in reverse, which is really interesting. I think maybe there'll be more time to talk about that next week.
Well, I think that I just want to say really quickly before
Yeah.
you go on right there, that's really interesting because the expansion of our lifespan is allowing women to pour themselves into their career first, their interests themselves, their maturation process, whatever it is they're doing, right? As they're going through the householder years, which I say like 18 to about 45. And so now you're getting to the point where you realize, okay, what is it that's calling me now? And whatever it is, if it's the call then to find a life partner, if it's the call then to maybe start a family, but if middle age, so to speak, wasn't moving with
Yeah.
expanded lifespan, we wouldn't have that option. I mean, women having children into their 40s and late 40s, right, is because we now have this expanded lifespan.
And it's interesting because, part of your work, again, which we'll go and dive more deeply into next week, is about the creation of this new archetype that maybe we didn't need in the past, but is sorely needed now for women in that age range you described, 45 to 70. And now I'm thinking, well, what are the archetypal, like the goddesses and their archetypal qualities that serve the women of my generation? And there's a lot of talk about sovereignty and this term that Esther M. Harding coined called one in herself. She was a Jungian analyst focusing on women and women's experiences, right? And one in herself, she doesn't define herself in relationship to a man. I'm like paraphrasing the quote.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, and she does what she does because it's true for her. It's maybe how we would say authentic now.
yeah.
And we might use the word sovereignty now, which seems to kind of describe what she was talking about 60 years ago, whenever she wrote that book. And so I'm thinking now about how all of these different archetypes, Inanna, Artemis, Athena, um, um, who else? Hecate, all of these goddesses that really embody this idea of sovereignty and wholeness and authenticity, and a woman coming into her, um, authentic power, whatever
Mhm.
that means, are so ripe in the zeitgeist right now.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I I think about the triple goddess form, which I feel has absolutely evolved into a quaternity to maiden, householder, regent, and wise woman, right? And so because of the expanded lifespan and throughout history, the goddess has evolved from a unity to a duality to a triple form, and the goddesses, as Jane Ellen Harrison wrote, reflect the lives of the women, right, not the women the lives of the goddesses, right? So if the
Yeah.
goddesses reflect the lives of the women, when you talk about one in herself and uh the work of, oh, tell me the scholar's name again.
Esther,
Esther
M.
Harding,
Esther,
Esther
Esther Harding,
Harding.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I used some of her work in my dissertation as well. Um, that one in herself initially, I think, was thought of in terms of the maiden stage. But I think when we're looking at how archetypes and how life stages and women's lived experience is evolving, I believe that one in herself begins in the maiden stage and also and can continue through the householder, right?
Yeah.
Through that whole period, because it's the time when you're discovering who you are, what's important to you in the sense of sovereignty,
Yep.
not in how you are related to or serving anyone else, right?
Yeah, it's interesting because I wouldn't consider myself a maiden, even though in the archetypal sense I kind of like am that because I haven't entered into the homemaking stage, if you will.
But
Uh,
see, to me, the thing is that as soon as you, as, as in essence, left home, right, went to college, created your own life separate from your original genetic family, right? You went to college, you had your first apartment, you got your first job, you established yourself in the world, and you got into those busy householder years. For me, that's the end of the maiden, right? Because you're moving out of that protected status in a sense. And
yeah.
I understand that not all women had a perfect protected status childhood. That's not what I'm saying. I'm talking in metaphorical terms. Um, so yeah, I think that that sovereignty um starts in the maiden in the sense of coming to know ourselves, hopefully. And then in the householder years, in some ways, I think we get really involved and really through culture and through uh, instinct, we're encouraged to care for ourselves, care for others, and to pour ourselves into whatever it is, whether it's our career, whether it's our families, whether it's our friends, whether it's our community, if it's all of the above, right? During those householder years. And then again, when we get into the perimenopause, menopause shift, right? And the hormone profile changes, and no longer does biology encourage us to pour ourselves into others, but to reclaim that sovereignty, to reclaim that sense of one in self, right? And to rediscover, okay, now who am I?
Hmm. Yes, yes, that's such a great question. Who am I? I think like the lucky person is the person who continues to let that be their driving question throughout
Yeah.
their life, to
Hmm.
never assume that they know who they are, but
Yeah.
they're always in a state of perpetual becoming who they are. And you may never get there. By the end of your life, you'll be like, well, I don't know. I thought I thought I was somewhere, but now I'm really like I see that I'm actually at the beginning of something new.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know. I think ideally we continue to learn and grow through all the life stages, right? Whatever we want to call them, whatever bracketed age we want to give them, whatever um, social, cultural, psychological lens we want to approach life and living it through. The idea is continuing to grow, continuing to learn, and discovering who we are at any particular stage. But the
Right.
thing that I find so fascinating is, and of course, it's sort of the crux of my work, is the shift that happens, that triple shift that happens during Regency, where
Yeah.
where women decide, okay, um, I've done what I've done for the last 20 years, and now I'm ready to look at what I've learned, who I am, where do I want to go now, what do I want to do, um, what is my legacy going to be, how am I going to contribute to the collective, what do I see that how I can help, what work can I do that's transformative, that kind of
Yeah.
that kind of perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. This is going to be really interesting as we continue along with these two different kind of developing life stages, both for my generation and yours. Um, I realized too that we meant to have like share what goddess means to both of us.
Yeah,
I
this is a
think
good place to do it, right?
yeah, I'm like, wow, we talked a lot about goddesses, but we haven't defined it. So, do you want to go first, or do you want me to share?
Why don't you? I just talked a lot. Why don't you go?
Okay, you can have a little break. So, I do have a video up on my channel describing what I believe goddess is, but it's always kind of evolving. So I relate to the goddess in several different ways, or goddess, capital G. which by the way, I need to make a little caveat. Goddess capital G, I got from Carol P. Christ. She's one of the foremothers of the goddess spirituality movement. And I meant to bring this up earlier when you were talking about the goddess spirituality movement and sacred feminism and stuff. She wrote a foundational essay, which both Dr. A and I are both very familiar with. It's called Why Women Need the Goddess. And and part of the reason is that she repeats throughout the essay is to affirm the female body, female power, the female will, and bonds and heritage. Okay, and she describes why she uses goddess with a capital G. I'd have to paraphrase right now because it's been a while since I've read it, but basically it's like to counter this idea of God as being exclusively masculine
Mhm.
with a capital G, right? And to give us a sense of the sacred feminine divinity, that's not just, this grand principle or grand creatrix, but also lives within us. Okay, so that's okay, there we go. That's one way of talking about goddess.
Yeah.
So there is this broad way I see goddess, which is immanent, as Dr. Andrea already mentioned, like she's alive in nature, inside of us, every aspect of creation. And there's a lot of indigenous communities that see the divine in that way, or goddess in that way, Mother Earth, right? We all know about this concept of Mother Earth. Um, Maybe, I don't know, maybe it's also like we can go back and forth and talk about these concepts because I have kind of like all these different layers from which I understand goddess, and I don't want to make us necessarily have to go back and repeat stuff if you have similar ways of seeing the goddess. So
Yeah.
do you have anything else you want to say about goddess as immanent or Mother Nature?
I think one of my favorite ways of thinking about the goddess is looking at some of the ideas of mythology, right?
Hmm.
And for me, a- what archaeomythologists like Marie Gimbutas and others talked about in terms of some of these early Neolithic and Paleolithic cultures and what seems to be or seem to have been their understanding of the goddess is something that I really ascribe to personally and is near and dear to my heart. And it's the idea that early cultures saw the universe when you look up at night and you see the cosmos, and they could see the Milky Way because there was not a lot of light pollution, right? And they could
Or
see,
phones to distract them.
yes, our phones to, yes, exactly, our phones to try to take pictures of it instead of
Yeah.
looking at it. um that 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 the cosmos itself was the womb of the goddess, and that everything that came into being, everything that was created at, if you want to think of it as the Big Bang or whatever you want to think of it, right? Or the great milk of the Hindu seas, right?
Yes.
Um, that everything that was created that came into matter was born of the goddess, as in the universe was the womb, and here comes creation as the baby, so to
And
speak.
this is a very tantric viewpoint too. If you are a Shakti tantric person, that's the foundation of Kali as the womb of the, universe. So there are still people that believe this.
Yes, well, yeah, well, yes, I'm not alone. Yeah.
And
So,
me too. I'm
yes,
one of this is my
yes,
concept too.
yeah,
Yes.
exactly. And so in that ideation, in that myth theme, that way of thinking about creation as the child of the divine, right? Um, it allows us to see all of life as sacred, and that energy of the divine mother or the divine creatrix or creatress or creator, if we want to try to think of that as beyond gender, um, is within all things, right? And is accessible at all times to everyone. So when I think of goddess, or I think of the mythological goddesses, I think of the unity of the original archetypal feminine or sacred feminine, and that the goddesses proceed as embodiments of that energy, of that idea in different cultures through different time, right?
Yes.
And
Yes. And
and
this is like, sorry, go
yeah, and
ahead.
they reveal aspects
Yep.
of that divine energy as it is made manifest in different ways.
Exactly. And so this is, yes, so Maria Gimbutas talks about this quite a bit in her work, especially in the trifold cyclic energies, the creative life cycle, birth, sustenance, death, rebirth,
Mhm.
right? So like the goddess represents that trifold energetic creative cycle.
Yeah,
But
and you have to, I
also,
just have to interject, and there
yeah,
in physics, there is nothing, nothing is destroyed, right?
right.
Energy is, it's not, it's always back and reinfolded into itself. Not, and nothing is lost. And so if that's
Yes.
the case, then there has to be a system of rebirth. There has to be a
Yes.
system of regeneration. And in understanding how the physical vehicle reflects that, that is through the feminine.
Yes, exactly. She is this is, I'm like, okay, I have to preface this. Like, I'm not, Hindu, but I have so much respect and reverence for the Hindu traditions, and a lifelong student of Hinduism. So this is very well reflected in their belief systems as I understand it, right? And Shakti meaning life energy, life force energy or power. That's the best translation in English. And where Shiva would be that's the masculine principle, the resting awareness or universal awareness. And then Shakti is everything in the manifest world, the seen and the unseen. And the creative life cycle is her by virtue of her. This is why I also always say that I really detest the current New Age model for feminine and masculine. And actually, it appears in depth psychology too. Well, and less so, but you kind of see it in the depth psychological world a little bit, where the feminine is like relegated to the receptive,
Mhm.
because I see receptivity as very inactive. Now, magnetic is different than receptivity. It's like the other side of receptivity because it has an active quality. But the whole point is that in a system that sees the sacred feminine, this feminine principle as power, as life force energy, she is the active principle.
Yeah.
And the masculine, which is the awareness within all of energy and matter, itself is the receptive quality. And that's like when the Kundalini rises, it's
Yeah.
the feminine that's
It,
rising
it,
up the
it,
spine to meet the masculine.
the masculine provides the structure within which the feminine activates. It's, yeah.
Yeah, it's the maybe the mind structure itself, the yeah. So it's a very complicated, I mean, it's simple and complicated at the same time.
Yeah.
So the other point is that they perceive the feminine, right, as the one in the many, right? So you have the Shakti, the feminine principle, and then all of her goddess manifestations. So back to the point that you were talking about, right? And yeah, so Hinduism has their own set of 1,001 goddess names. I'm sure there's actually more when you start to get into all the
Yeah.
folk, the smaller local traditions. But I would include in that all the other goddesses in the
Mhm.
world, right? They are all part of Shakti. But not only that, so this is where I think I might differ from some other people. A lot of times we talk about these goddesses as archetypes, as psychological constructs that either that live inside of us, that help kind of mirror our inner reality, or as something to emulate. Like Durga, goddess Durga is the warrior, right? And she helps us learn how to be more decisive, or stand up for ourselves, or create boundaries, which I think are all great. This is a great way to work with goddess archetypes as a way to feel empowered,
Mhm.
and how to see yourself, the multiplicity within yourself. I have also a spiritual and devotional relationship with the goddesses, so I actually experience them as living beings
Mhm.
that can both live inside of me. Like I believe the power of the goddess does live inside of us, the Shakti.
Mhm.
And maybe these different goddesses can inhabit us, but they have their own sovereignty, their own livingness, um, that I believe exists at subtle levels. So they're not just concepts or ideas to me; they're actual living presences. So So I believe that that's important to share too, because some people might actually relate to goddesses in that way as well. So we have all these different layers, right? And then some people like might just see them as interesting mythological or literary figures, like, oh, this is a really interesting, figure to read about in a fantastical story. So I think those are, and then the last thing I want to say, because you and I have talked about this before, is there's a sociological aspect to goddesses too, as they shift and change over time, depending on who's telling the story about these gods and goddesses.
Yes.
Okay, I'm done with my rant.
Well, we could talk about this for days on end, so our audience will have to excuse us for our passion, I guess. The thing about it is that 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 entering into the field of goddess studies, or entering into um or desiring to enter into the archetypal field, let's say, of the sacred feminine or divine feminine. And you and I were talking about these gendered words and how this is getting muddy because of what's going on with the disconnection of embodiment from gender and the social constructs. And but until someone comes up with another set of terms, right, for divine feminine, I'm happy to use that, which exists within the male and the female in terms of gender or
Mhm.
embodied human experience.
Yeah.
But the whole concept for me, and what you had talked about in terms of them being having a devotional relationship with particular goddesses, is that what we're talking about is, for those who want to pursue it or are interested in engaging with it, is we're talking about real, tangible, experiential, energetic forms of divinity, right? Um, that we can approach, that we can enter into, that we can um, engage with in terms of our own interpersonal growth, in terms of our understanding of the feminine as a living aspect of the the Godhead, which is beyond male and female, right? Ultimately, the ultimate creative energy behind the universe. So each individual, can decide how they want to interact with this. And you and I were talking about this the other day, and I'm a really, really big fan of the work of Clarissa Pinkola Estes in terms of number one, she's an amazing storyteller, an amazing psychoanalyst, has an amazing background and an amazing entire suite of teachings, right? Not just Women Who Run with the Wolves, but the other things that she's written and recorded as well. And I feel that in some ways, what she's been able to do is she's been able to take myth and fairy tale and folk tale and crack them open and kind of give women a skeleton key, if you will, to be able to open up these tales and these myths and see within them the eternal archetypal, what she calls the river beneath the river, right? Of
Mm.
this divine feminine principle, and how we can discover our connection to it within ourselves, and how we can activate it, and how we can make it living and effective in how we live our day-to-day lives. And that, I think, is the really important principle in terms of looking at how to connect with goddesses, right? Or wild woman, as she calls it, the 2 million-year-old woman. The Shakti, the divine feminine principle of the creative forms of energy that fuel all life, right? So it's it always takes me back to Joseph. One thing that Joseph Campbell said, and this always, I think this is a really great way to think of it, is And I know sometimes, he can be out of style. I get it, but I like this. I like this idea. He says when we're talking about the divine or God or goddesses or divine principles or Shakti, right? The things, the most exciting things or sacred things that we want to talk about, we can't talk about because there are no words to talk about it, right? And then the next most exciting things to talk about are the principles and the ideas, which are difficult to talk about because we can't really understand it or articulate it. And he says, if you're outside and you're looking up at the full moon and you point at the full moon and you're pointing, you say, look at the full moon. He says, do not mistake the finger for the moon.
Yeah, that's actually a Buddhist like koan.
Yeah,
But
do
I do
not,
remember him writing about that
yeah,
in
do not mistake the
Enrique's.
finger for the moon. And so when you're trying to talk about these really esoteric principles, right? We're trying to talk about the divine feminine. We're trying to talk about this Shakti energy that exists as the fundamental creative energy behind all life and form, right?
Yeah.
Realize that we're using words to talk about something that is beyond words.
Yeah, that is never, that's so numinous that we'll never be able to, because words are a human construct.
Yes,
And the moment you use a word, you're actually limited in trying to describe something that's unlimited.
yes, right.
Um, it automatically puts boundaries around something. And I know Alan Watts, another philosopher who people like a contemporary of Joseph Campbell's,
Yeah,
basically. Joseph Campbell was, if people don't know, a famous 20th century mythologist. And Alan Watts was a famous 20th century philosopher. Um, and he says something that the in Hinduism, there's a similar concept of neti neti, not that, not that,
yeah.
right? So every time you try to
The
say,
via
well, God is
negativa.
this, yeah,
Yes, the via negativa. Yay.
yeah, God is this. It's like,
Yeah.
nope, it's not that.
When you just, it's not this and it's not that, you're getting closer by eliminating.
Yeah, our human, our
Yeah.
mental constructs. So yeah, anytime that we actually try to use words to describe it, we're actually, in a way, as we're coming closer to understanding it, we're also distancing ourselves from understanding it. This is why I love mysticism and philosophy, because it's always the paradox, and the goddess is the paradox. That's another thing. Ooh, we don't have much time to get into goddesses paradox, but maybe we'll pin that as a conversation point for another time, because that is such a beautiful quality of the feminine and of the spiritual path, is heading straight first into the paradox rather than trying to be, and Joseph Campbell would also say too, right, that like, like trying to create God as perfection, as creates a situation in which there's nothing to, you can't reach God, there's nothing to reach, right? Because God is perfect and unattainable when it's perfect.
Right. And leaving it in the transcendent realm as opposed to experiencing it in the immanence,
Indwelling. Yeah.
indwelling within,
Yeah.
within and without. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
absolutely.
Wow. Wow. Well, we're coming pretty close to the hour point. I forgot to ask people to ask questions there was a little bit of chat by my I don't know if she wants me to use her name, but by a friend of mine. um, and so thank you for engaging with us. But as we continue on, we'll remind people to, ask questions, or if they have comments they want us to read, we
Yeah.
will.
Yeah.
And she did mention that Amaterasu, the Japanese sun goddess, she's another one of those goddesses that, as I was speaking to in the beginning, she withdraws her life force because of patriarchal
Yeah.
hubris.
Yeah.
Um,
And one of
and
the things I just wanted to drop in
yeah,
there is that this is a really kind of general conversation about who we are and our points of view and our mythological sort of, orientation towards what we're going to be doing here. But we are actually going to be talking about very specific things in
yeah,
each, right, in each upcoming episode, from everything from dream work to interviewing authors who are writing about AI and its influence on goddess mythology, to people who are talking about the whole abortion rights issue in relationship to the sacred feminine. I mean, we have an incredible line of discussion people coming in where we'll be kind of running it a little bit more like The View, right? Where we're having discussions between more than just us. And so we
Yeah,
have a number of different really interesting, maybe what we should actually do is put out a list of episodes that are coming so people
I
can
was
know
thinking,
what we're
yeah.
talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, so people can see what's coming up. Yeah, we'll figure out how to do that, put it in a place where people can see it.
Yeah.
Because yeah, we have our episodes all booked out for the next 2 months, I think.
Yep.
Already moving into May. So, yeah, this has been great, Dr. A. Thank you so much for joining me.
Well, thank
Um,
you so much for having me, Dr. A, Miss Annalisa.
it's such a pleasure to be in conversation with somebody. So I was glad that you said yes. And also I think because we have a nice rapport and we have the similar enough backgrounds that we can kind of riff off of each other.
Yeah.
Not just the depth psychological and the goddess spirituality piece, but the fact that we both come from theater and film. That's
I
crazy.
I know that that really is pretty incredible that we both come from that background. Yeah, from live theater and storytelling. So yeah,
Yeah,
it gives us an opportunity to share a lot of things.
it really does. Yeah.
Yeah.
So any other final words before we say goodbye?
Um, so long,
I
farewell. Oh, someone
I
asked.
was about to say that too. So
Someone submitted, can we submit ideas? Yes, please.
yes,
Yeah,
please.
absolutely. Throw them all in the chat. Ideas, things you'd like us to talk about, things you're interested in.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And
We're
you can
hoping.
message me because I know you know how to message me.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go. Absolutely. I'm really excited to kind of open the door or open the gate to these concepts and these ideas. And I hope that that people, both women and men, will come and hear, what we're talking about and maybe think about how it applies to them and their loved ones and their own perspective. The thing I will say, that's so important to me about the use of myth in terms of understanding ourselves and our lives is that looking at our lives from a mythic perspective gives us a top-down look on our lives in terms of seeing how our story fits into the great grand narrative of the human story. And that myth shows us that even goddesses suffer, number one,
Which is
right?
one of that. Well, that's an episode coming up, I think, in early, I can't remember,
April.
March or April. Yeah.
That's April, I think. Even goddesses suffer. And myth shows us that what we're having is a very personal experience of a universal rite of passage. So I hope that you will all join us for these weekly conversations.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yay, yes. Oops, yes. So we were also asked weekly show, same time. So I want to reiterate to everybody, yes, same time, same place. Um, you can
Wednesday
count on us to
mornings,
be
10
here.
a.m. Pacific. Yep.
Yeah. And we made it this time so that it would be more accessible to people around the world. And because I travel a lot to the other side of the world, I wanted to be able to,
Yeah,
not have to get up at 1 a.m. to,
exactly.
yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you, Dr. A. I am so excited to be in this space with you. I'm so excited for what we're, brewing in our cauldron, our
Absolutely.
witch's
Namaste, you
cauldron.
wild woman.
No, yeah, and you too. Look at that hair. So with that, I'm going to say goodbye to everybody else. I'm going to look to see how I can stop the recording here, end stream. There we go. So everybody, thank you so much for showing up. I forgot to remind you at the start, so I'll remind you now. Please like this video. Leave comments if you have any other comments you'd like to share. I did see the episode idea, so we'll collect that. And share this conversation with your friends. Please leave comments for us. I mean, and not just comments after the fact, but dialogue with us if you're here live. We're going to get really good at being in dialogue with you. So thank you so much, Dr. A. Thank you, everybody at home, and we'll see you next Wednesday at this time.
All right, everybody. See you next week.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.
I think it's ended. End stream. Here we go. End. Stream finished. Okay. Great. Sweet.